How the hell did they pull this off? Oh, how did people without steel or wheels or a written language build a stairway to heaven? And a pleasure palace for the ages. Are you kidding? Machu Picchu. Just one reason the Incas must have been so proud, so secure in their impossible empire from the Andes to the Amazon. Until the outsiders came, carrying swords and germs to take their gold and end their reign. And the last Incas could never have imagined how the outsiders would just keep coming, and how the curse of Inca gold would never end. Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. My name is Bill Weir, and I'm a storyteller. I've reported from all over the world, and I have seen so much change. So I made a list of the most wonderful places to explore right before they change forever. This is the Wonder List. We think we are so smart with our towers and our highways, but how great would our cities be if we had to build them without tools? Could we stack rocks the size of houses using only wit and muscle? Build cities atop mountains using only sweat and the stars? Well, the ancient South Americans could, and long before Columbus set sail, they built an empire as big as 2 Californias. They mined silver and gold by the tons, laid enough good roads to circle the earth. But then, in a relative blink, they were gone. And now a lost civilization lives on, mainly in the bucket lists of countless modern wanderers. Yes, if you hope to keep up with the Indiana Joneses, Machu Picchu is on your list. It is the most popular ruin in South America, and that scares the hell out of the people sworn to protect it. They worry that this wonder of the world is being loved to death in an era of greed and boom towns. While some turn history into cash, other desperate descendants of the Inca take part in the biggest and most devastating gold rush in modern times. And so, we're off on a magical mystery tour up and down the Inca Trail to savor what we can while anyone can. And we begin where the Incas began, in the clean, thin air of Lake Titicaca. This massive lake is over 12,000 feet high, twice as high as Denver, or roughly the altitude most skydivers jump. So the Incas, my goodness, they had to be the kind of seamen who could navigate this gigantic body of water, and mountaineers with lungs like hot air balloons to move around up here. Oh, I'm hurting. On the island of the sun, we find a maze of ruins where holy men and women would sip a very special cactus juice. This is a hallucinogen, right?
Exactly. So that helps to open the iris of your eyes. And the idea, so it's to find, for example, small corridors which once were covered by this kind of roofs.
But also provide like a psychedelic trip, huh?
Exactly.
According to Jimena, my guide, the brew would open their eyes in the dark labyrinth and their minds to visions of pumas and eagles and snakes.
So that was a special thing also of visions, to see different mixtures of animals and look at this beautiful landscape.
This is a vision
Yes.
that needs no psychedelic cactus juice. Look at this.
Yes.
Wow.
So you see this niche here. So I remember the first time when I came here and I standed there, a local guide came and he told me, don't stand there because that's the portal of another dimension. When you stand there, so you feel a very special peace.
Really? Will I teleport into some other time and space?
Yes.
Sadly, no. But there are worse places to enjoy twilight than the Incan Garden of Eden. For millions of Incan people, this was the site of their very creation. The story goes that the moon and the sun came together and hid in this rock during the Great Flood, and when it was over, it flew away.
Yes, that's right.
Well, as luck would have it, look! There's the moon, the full moon.
Isn't it?
Rising over Bolivia, just as the sun sets over Peru. I might convert to Inka. But their reverence for celestial light came with a certain brutality. This is the ceremonial stone table used to sacrifice young women to the gods. And how would they do it?
Well, they opened the chest, they took it off the heart, and according how it was bumping, or maybe testing, right? So they could knew how it's going to be the agricultural period.
Really? So the growth of the crops depended on
that's what I did.
The beating heart of this woman.
Exactly.
Wow. Locals still use this table each summer to sacrifice goats or llamas. While out in the water lives another creature being sacrificed. Another victim of human sprawl and superstition. Lake Titicaca, Bolivia. And I am in search of an elusive and endangered creature with a most unfortunate name.
We're after Telmatobius culeus, is the scientific name of the frog.
Jaime is a scientist with the Bolivian Amphibian Initiative.
Telmatobius, it's life in water, and culeus means scrotum or sac.
Ball sack.
Yeah, ball sack.
So it's the giant scrotum frog of Lake Titicaca.
Yeah, you can call it like that.
Okay. Drawn by tales of underwater Incan cities, Jacques Cousteau dove here. He didn't find any gold, but he did find a kind of frog that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The only frog that spends its entire life underwater, thanks to loose skin to absorb thin oxygen at this high altitude. When Jacques Cousteau came here in the 70s, there was millions of them, right? And they were the size of canned hams.
Yeah, he described like 50-centimeter frog, 1 kilogram weight.
Right.
And
it's like a 2-pound frog.
Yeah, it's like a 2-pound frog.
Since then, at least 80% have been wiped out. A massive die-off in 2015 alarmed locals to the reality that this lake is becoming more toxic by the day, as lakeside cities get bigger and pollution flows stronger. And then there is the baseless belief that these guys are a natural Viagra. So they sell frog juice in the markets of Lima.
Here we have a big frog.
Oh, look at that. What's up, buddy? See, how could you put that face in a blender?
Maybe we are some of the last persons that will see this frog because it's on the way.
But you're doing your best to stop that from happening.
We are trying.
Jaime is trying to sound the alarm that the fate of this frog is just one warning that a new invasion into the land of the Incas is coming too hard, too fast. Peru and Bolivia are very poor countries. And like so many corners of our ever-crowded planet, their lake in the sky shows the struggle for survival and balance. And there is no better example than the bizarre floating islands of the Uros. Welcome to Uros Cantati.
Cristina.
Hola.
Hola.
Camisaraki.
Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto.
Thank you. Hola. Mucho gusto.
Waliki.
Waliki. What an amazing island you have. This is so cool.
Flotante isla.
It's like you live on a big bouncy castle.
You can jump. You can jump. He says you can jump.
Yeah, I can jump. I don't have to worry about. Yeah.
If you jump too much,
I'll go right through. You don't have to worry about spilling. Long before the Incas began carving stone cities, people known as the Uros fled their enemies by weaving entire islands out of reeds and grass and floating to safety in the hidden corners of Lake Titicaca. And the good thing is, if you get in a fight with your neighbors or your relatives, you can just cut the island in half, right, and float different ways. This is Christina's hotel, and it is deluxe. There is solar power to charge your phone, indoor plumbing, and if you don't like the view, she will turn the island. A couple reasons why she has a couple thousand good reviews on TripAdvisor.com. Oh my God.
Tu casa. ¿Dónde está la novia?
Where's your girlfriend?
Well, I don't have a girlfriend. I have a wife.
Tiene esposa.
She would love this.
Tu esposa, ¿dónde?
Mi
Esto
esposa.
es hotel 5 estrellas con camas flotantes y el movimiento automático.
Some Uros think Christina is a sellout, a cultural profiteer. But her neighbor and employee Raul has agreed to take me back to where they came from. And the contrast is shocking. Mucho gusto. Me llamo es Bill.
Bill, se llama Bill. ¿Qué es eso?
¿Qué es eso? Oh, look at this.
Choca.
Oh.
Tú los crías acá.
Sí, voy a criar.
Our translator, Bibiana, learns that these are wild birds that live in the reeds. The Uros raid their nests and use body heat to hatch the eggs. Why do these people stay? Why don't they move closer to Puno and have a better life like you?
Las otras personas que están viviendo acá no quieren dejar, por decir, la herencia de sus bisabuelos, por esa razón.
So do they own this land?
That's
a complicated question.
That's a complicated question.
Nosotros queremos ser dueños, sí, por eso ellos se quedan.
Despite their long history here, they are considered squatters in a Peruvian nature reserve. At first, the government looked the other way when a handful of tourist islands popped up. But now there are more than 70, creating a new stress on the fragile wetland. But there is no denying that Christina's life is so much better. Thanks to visitors from around the world, she's put 2 children through college and even took a vacation of her own to Europe. For her, tourism is a gigantic blessing. But when does it become a curse? Cusco, Peru. At its height, it rivaled the capitals of Europe, with 150,000 people. Now the heart of the Incan Empire is best known as a point of departure for the million-plus who now descend on Machu Picchu each year. And it is literally a descent from a city over 2 miles high, across cobblestone 700 years old, down into the sacred valley, down into the cloud forest. There's no way to drive to Machu Picchu. One has to either hike for days or ride the rails. In the 80s, there might have been only scruffy backpackers waiting for the whistle with the locals. Not anymore.
Peru Rail, creating unpredictable journeys, announces the departure of the vista.
This is so amazing, Viviana.
It is, it is. I mean, I've been coming to Cusco and Machu Picchu so many times, but every time, I get the chills.
Oh. Bibiana is fiercely proud of her Peruvian ancestry and the magnetic allure of the Incan history.
I remember that I was a little kid in Cusco, and we had been taught and always heard in our lives, you know, that the Spanish came and took all the gold and the conquistadores, you know, destroyed the empire. And I was like feeling this sense of, this is ours, you know, this is our past, our ancestors. And it was like, and I just wanted to climb every single, you know, building, place in Machu Picchu, fascinated by it.
As we roll through some of the most fertile farmland on the planet, she breaks out a local snack to prove just how fertile. The giant corn of the Sacred Valley. The size of those kernels, that's ridiculous. They're like the size of grapes. And you don't use steroids or
No.
witchcraft?
This kind of corn was grown in Machu Picchu as well. Soil is extremely fertile there. Now it has become a center of tourism. And unfortunately, or fortunately for some, people are selling their agricultural land for hotels. So there are some agronomists that are saying, okay, what's gonna happen? What are we gonna do? This is maize, this is the corn.
This is it, right
Yes,
here.
this is it.
But do you ever see a day, say mid-century, where politically it makes sense to build a big superhighway to Machu Picchu?
Oh, no.
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 Why? Because it's physically impossible, or it would be too much stress on the site?
You really have to control how many people get to Machu Picchu.
Yeah. But as we arrive at the town long known as Aguas Calientes, I see why some believe Peru has already lost control of its most popular attraction. It looks like a rambling boomtown, built entirely on improvisation, sprawling into every level square inch. This was a tiny, sleepy village when a Yale man named Hiram Bingham wandered in a century back. Like Indiana Jones, he was part-time history professor, part-time explorer of modest acclaim, until the July day he climbed this path with a local farmer and cop and a little boy who promised to show him the old things. Their hike is now replicated by a fleet of buses racing up and down the mountain. The crowds are thickest at dawn, so we intentionally arrive just before closing after many have cleared out. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look at this. Oh, are you kidding? Wow. Oh my God. I cannot fathom how many man-hours it took at this altitude. We're at the same height most skiers in Colorado hit the top of the chairlift. And these folks, 700-800 years ago, built this without an ounce of mortar or plaster. It takes the breath away in a lot more ways than one. Oh, look at this doorway. Where I started. Most archaeologists believe that all of this was built as a spot of ultimate relaxation and religion for the VIPs of the Inca world. A place to escape the crowded heat of Cusco, relax among the clouds, worship the sun and the stars.
Cada día es diferente y cada vez que uno recorre Machu Picchu estás observando cosas diferentes, entonces uno aprende día a día.
Fernando has been in charge of this site for 20 years, but he still gets giddy over new discoveries.
Está totalmente tapado, no se ve esto, ahí se ve. Se ha excavado.
All of this was covered, you know, by soil, by dirt, by all of this that you can see.
I see, yeah.
It started down here, and all of this was finally uncovered.
His team recently unearthed this celestial window carved without chisels to track the path of the sun for planting and worship. After a 10-minute climb, I reached the spot I have seen photographed so many times. That high corner where the last Inca ruler must have stood and smiled at the sun and thought, it is good to be the king. And maybe we should build another addition. Up there. That's Picchu, the young peak, Machu Picchu, old peak. And tomorrow morning we're gonna try to climb that. And I may die. Around 3,000 people pile into Machu Picchu each day, but only a few hundred are allowed to climb Huayna Picchu, a collection of terraces and temples perched way on top of that needle of granite. Make it to the top?
Yeah.
How is it?
Amazing.
What the hell? How hard can it be? Oh my God. It's the Incan Stairmaster. ¿Cómo se llama?
René.
René?
Yeah. You?
Mucho gusto. Bill.
Bill.
Mucho gusto. René, our porter, reveals a performance-enhancing secret. A bag of cocoa leaves. Too many?
No,
That's good. And just, sort of a Peruvian homeopathic amphetamine. I'll happily take all the help I can get. But as he bounds ahead, mine doesn't seem to be kicking in. Oh, sweet baby Jesus.
You guys are almost there. Almost.
That's what they all say. Oh. Wow. Oh my gosh. This is ridiculous. Ridiculously magnificent. I mean, there was a guy, 600, 700 years ago, who was in charge of laying those bricks over there. You can see why someone would give credit to the aliens for helping the Incas. Which is kind of racist, by the way. Because if the Romans can do their thing, why can't the South Americans do theirs? Look at this, look at this. Up on this holy mountain, 9,000 feet above sea level, I find an intricate system of temples and terraces hewn out of the granite. They held gardens and altars for sacrifice. Some of them connected by tiny tunnels. Oh man, muy pequeño. They said it couldn't be done. Oh, my goodness. Archaeologists look at this place and think, oh my goodness, let us stop time, let us preserve every stone, study every ruin, learn as much as we can before wear and tear takes its toll. Developer looks at this place and thinks, ooh, I could put the hotel there and the cable car there, and all that money could help the native people. Where's the balance? On Huayna Picchu, there are few places just to stand still, and the trail is so narrow the 500-person-a-day limit makes sense. But climbing back down to Machu Picchu, you gotta wonder, with no plumbing or sewage, with these fragile ruins, how many visitors can it really handle? So, how do you imagine this place 600 years ago?
I think of this as being like a resort of sorts.
Okay.
Of course,
hundreds of people? Thousands?
Hundreds of people. I don't think that this is for everybody to come.
Man, if the Inca could see it now, when hundreds arrive before breakfast. As an archaeologist, Luis Jaime understands the draw. So, when the Peruvian government asks you, what's the optimum number of tourists we should allow into Machu Picchu? What's your answer?
As an archaeologist or a bureaucrat?
First as an archaeologist.
Well, that's an easy answer, no? Zero.
None.
No.
But as a bureaucrat, as Peru's former Deputy Minister of Culture, Luis Jaime knows that virtually all of Peru's tourism depends on this one site. When a landslide closed Machu Picchu a few years back, tourism fell by 90%. Is there pressure, financial pressure, to allow more people in?
Normalmente debería crecer entre 3 al 4%. Para eso estamos nosotros preparados. Es decir, de acá a 5 años no creo que pasemos de los 2 millones de visitantes al año en Machu Picchu, ¿no?
2 million. He says there will be tighter control on pedestrian flow and limits on the size of tour groups, but 2 million would mean twice as many visitors as now.
So do you think the people that are crowding in here today are getting that Inca experience? What the king enjoyed?
I don't think so. Well, maybe 45 years ago when I came here for the first time and there were only 500 people per day in a big day, you got that impression. That the site was yours, it was quiet, it was, I mean, incredible. There were orchids all around and hummingbirds. Now I'm not sure that people are getting that experience. And in the future, if things keep on going the way they have been going, certainly it will not be that experience, no?
But Luis has promised to show me a few places where that experience still exists. Uncrowded gems that could delight visitors and release the pressure on precious Machu Picchu. His name was Pachacuti, the Earth Shaker, and he built an empire unlike any other. Many know about Cusco, his sprawling capital. Everybody knows about Machu Picchu. But a relative few take the time to visit a place like this. Pisac, a breathtaking city of massive terraces and delicate temples perched above the sacred valley. Given its strategic placement, high priests, farmers, and soldiers probably shared this spot with eyes both on the heavens and the ground below.
Oh, wow. You weren't kidding. It's like the biggest amphitheater I've ever seen.
Look at how beautiful the waving, you see the...
Right.
They are not fighting nature, you see? They are simply trying to make it a little bit more...
Sweeten it.
Sweeten it, that's the word.
While the terraces at Machu Picchu were largely for looks, these held sophisticated farms, different crops at different altitudes, including hundreds of varieties of potatoes.
Now this is a penthouse. This is magnificent. Look at the stonework here.
This is some of the finest stonework in all the empire. No? You only find this quality of stonework in Cusco.
It goes in like a cork.
Yeah. But here in this monument, we have some double-sided rocks. And that is, I mean, that is difficult, you know, because then you have one single piece of rock
that
has
has
two sides.
square.
Exactly. No? So, I mean, that is the ultimate thing, no? And nothing compares to this.
These intricate plumbing systems, all gravity-fed, all carved into the rock, fountains feeding into pools, feeding into baths, feeding into gutter systems. This is water that's been running for 600-700 years.
Who knows? If Hiram Bingham had quote-unquote discovered this place instead, if he had pimped Pisac as the lost city in the clouds on the pages of National Geographic, maybe this place would be crawling with tourists. Or if he'd found this ruin on the outskirts of Cusco, the circle that once held a 5-story temple of the sun with a ceiling lined in gold and etched with the constellations.
There's a theory, you know, but it's more than a theory. Cusco seems to have been shaped as a puma. And if the town of Cusco was the body of the puma, no, this was the head of the puma.
The lightning bolt zigzag at the top of the puma's head are a puzzle of boulders the size of minivans, with seams tight enough to reject a credit card.
As someone who has devoted his life to protecting the culture of Peru, what worries you the most? Is it too many tourists? Is it development? What keeps you awake at night when you think about places like this?
Yo creo que el mayor problema es que no hemos encontrado y no tenemos las herramientas para generar un verdadero modelo de gestión de los sitios.
Ricardo is the director of culture in Cusco. He'd love to create a world-class visitor center here and others around the country to take the pressure off of Machu Picchu. But Peruvian bureaucracy has paralyzed the entire process. They simply have too many precious archaeological sites and too little management. For centuries, this town was known as Aguas Calientes, hot springs. But in a purely commercial move, they just changed the name to Machu Picchu. But whatever you call it, the crush of visitors is overwhelming their crude infrastructure, and the hasty urban planning means they are just one mudslide away from catastrophe.
En el momento nosotros tenemos que reconocer que hemos llegado a cierto límite, nos hemos sentido saturados en ciertas épocas.
The young mayor says there is a plan to contain the explosive growth, but there are no signs of it stopping.
This is probably one of the most expensive real estate in Peru.
This was supposed to be a public square, but it is now overrun with squatters selling cheap trinkets. The Peruvian government seems powerless to control them, and Luis worries that an illegal land grab will overwhelm their most precious sites.
It used to be in Peru that the worst enemy we had in terms of cultural heritage were poachers and looters, digging for gold and mummies and and pots. But nowadays our worst problem is actually people encroaching into the land, taking it over and selling it. And the land traffickers are now feeding out of the only spots around us that are not taken, and those are the archaeological sites.
But for many folks from poor regions, squatting a trinket stand and cashing in on history beats the hell out of growing corn or raising llamas. And it could be worse. It could be this. Next stop, the Amazon, where boomtowns brimming with bars and brothels and badasses are part of the biggest illegal gold rush of modern times, where the curse of Incan gold and human greed rolls on. When a Spaniard named Pizarro used cannons to conquer an Incan city, the king offered the conquistador a ransom of gold, 750 tons of gold. Though the king was executed before the ransom arrived, that lust for gold turned an entire civilization into statues and memories. And that gold lust never went away. Today, it is turning huge swaths of the Amazon into utter wasteland. As the lungs of the planet, this rainforest not only captures our carbon and gives us oxygen to breathe, but it also holds 1/10 of the world's wildlife. The Madre de Dios region, Mother of God, holds one of the most precious pockets, renowned for housing a stunning menagerie of macaws and monkeys, jaguars and butterflies. The battle to save it from farmers with chainsaws is nothing new, but the fight against miners with chainsaws is, as illegal gold has replaced cocaine as Peru's most valuable export. So this is like the deadwood of the Amazon.
This is the deadwood of the Amazon.
A frontier, Wild West, lawless mining town.
That's a girly bar, prosty bar.
Prosty bar. Through a Carnegie-endowed program out of Stanford, Luis and Francisco study the devastating effects of illegal mining on every form of life in the Amazon.
This is the river, what it looks like.
Oh my God.
Look at this. Café con leche. And you see now the dead trees. Everything goes directly into these rivers that are now ponded. They're starting to drown the trees around here because the water's accumulating. All the trash is dumped here. Lots of vultures here. They're part of the cleanup crew, I guess.
This place has become hostile to gringos with cameras, but Francisco knows some guys in one of the many blue tarp shanty towns that rim the forest.
Hola. Mucho gusto.
Their illicit two-wheel taxi service is known as Los Tigres. My driver, one of the thousands of young men who have come from all over Peru, lured by an operation that could net $100 a day or get them killed. We ride for 20 minutes before the lush green begins to thin. The jungle floor turns to sand. A half-mile further, and the rainforest is gone. It's like we've entered a completely different ecosystem. From jungle to desert in a matter of feet.
Oh, this didn't exist. These lakes didn't exist Nothing did. It was just flat forest, like we went through. This is all man-made.
Wow, oh my God. Oh my God. And these are all toxic pools now.
This is all mining pits that are filled in after it's been abandoned with rainwater.
They use an old, brutal method, merciless on the land, cutting down trees, blasting riverbanks with diesel-powered fire hoses, creating a slurry that gets sifted until, eureka, a tiny flake of gold. Since this land only holds 2 grams of precious metal per ton of mud, mercury is needed to pull the gold from the sludge. And what effect does that mercury have on the living things here, including the people?
Well, it's magic for the mining process, but it's poison for everything else.
So it's not just the guys who are working with this stuff that are exposed to this dangerous stuff. It could end up in the fish market.
It does end up in the fish market. Because most of these people are subsistence fishers.
After decades of ambivalence, the national government finally started cracking down, raiding illegal mines from the jungles to the Andes, rounding up the usual suspects and blowing up their equipment, all under the command of this guy, Antonio Fernandez Geri.
Are the raids working? Because we've heard reports from some that say after your men leave and the helicopters fly away, the miners go back to business.
Esto forma parte de un proceso de reforma del Estado. En el mundo contemporáneo, las reformas del Estado se consolidan en varias décadas. Lo importante es que nosotros hemos empezado.
So you think it'll take a generation to stop this?
Tenemos áreas como Madre de Dios de más de 160,000 hectáreas deforestadas. 160,000 hectáreas no se van a reforestar en 3 o 4 años, ni en 5 años, se reforestarán en 10 años.
That's 620 square miles of Amazon turned to toxic sand. And according to these guys, that estimate of a comeback is way too generous.
How long will it take for this to come back?
Well, that's a very difficult question, but maybe hundreds of years.
It just struck me, driving through this jungle, that 600 years ago, the conquistadors came and took Peruvian gold by force. Now it's a market in London that changes the price and motivates guys who have no better options to do this.
What happens here is directly connected to that little price ticker, and that high price can spur a rush of people to go into a national forest and take apart a rainforest next week.
And so what is the fix? I mean, if you were given a superpower, you know, to address this, where would you start?
Well, I think what's key is to set up an effective certification system that connects the consumer with the gold.
Much the way consumers turn their backs on blood diamonds, Luis dreams of a day when we'll all demand green, fair trade gold. But how many lives, how much forest will be wrecked before we ever see such a change? The Incas may be long gone. Peru and Bolivia may seem so far away. But this journey was one big reminder of how we are all connected, from the Uros on their floating islands, to the archaeologists in their fragile cloud cities, to the gold miners scrambling to fill an insatiable demand. And this journey was one big reminder that the most powerful force in history is human nature. And our little choices add up to big changes, for better or worse.